Hello, everyone. Welcome to another question and response astrology time. I should say astrology first. We're going to talk about astrology. I'm going to talk if I can get my mic set up correctly. I'm Dr. Claire Moon, and if there are actually people here today, welcome. There's a chat to the right-hand side of your screen. You can use that to chat amongst yourselves or ask me questions, whatever questions you come with or that come up. It is kind of a bit of a potpourri time. It's a bit of a time to just kind of ask whatever in terms of transits as well. I usually have my once monthly forecast that is also somewhere on this channel, which is also live. And I do field some questions there, but I like to have this space to dedicate totally to just asking questions. But if transits come up, that's totally fine as well. Let me make sure I'm not stuck on a commercial. Hello, Clark. Welcome. It's nice to see a familiar face. I have one note of business from someone. So I'm going to start off answering that question. And then I have just kind of a bunch of ramblings of my own, mostly about Neptune and Aries, Saturn, Aries, Saturn, Neptune, that chunk of the sky. I've got several thoughts. I really should have just done a video about Neptune and Aries, but I just never really got around to it. And so all of those thoughts are now kind of leaking into other spaces, which is fine. But anyway, that's the plan. Not a friend of the show, but regionally speaking, I know that there are different fizzy waters, different carbonated beverages in different places. But if you have Waterloo where you are, I know they have this. I'm in Wisconsin. I know they have it in Minnesota. I know they have it in Colorado. I know they have it around. Um, the fruit punch, the tropical fruit. It tastes pretty much as close as you can get to fruit punch without actually being fruit punch. Highly recommend. It's really good. There was one other thing I wanted to share too that I don't remember, but anyway, let's get to it. And I do need the chart immediately to field the first question, which was from, if I can find it now, from at N7 Inquisitor. They were wondering if I was able to talk about being born on a station, like the day before Venus stations direct, for example. And so, yeah, we're going to talk about that. What does it mean to be born when a planet is stationing? And what stationing means is that if we watch that planet from day to day, from week to week, we're going to see that planet moving across the sky in a certain direction. And at some point, especially with Mercury, Venus, those are the two that it happens most frequently and we notice the most. They slow down, they come to a stop, and they start moving in the other direction across parts of the sky that they had just been in. And so that's what we mean when we talk about retrogrades. And then eventually at the end of that retrograde, that planet is going to slow down again, come to a apparent stop as we see it from our vantage point on Earth. And then they're going to start moving in that direction that they were moving in the first place. So that is the full cycle. There's, the pre-retrograde phase, the post-retrograde phase. For Mercury, it happens usually around 3 times a year. Venus happens about every 18 months. We get one with Mars every 2 years in terms of a retrograde. So all to say, what does it mean if you're born and a planet is stationing? So let's take Venus here, whoop, and put them and did they say which way they were stationing? Okay, stationing direct, yeah. So I guess before I get into answering that, I am going to say one more general thing about interpreting this is that when Mercury and Venus go retrograde, they go through the beams of the sun. They move through the heart of the sun, they come out on the other side. And so they do this rising in the morning sky, setting in the morning sky, rising in the evening sky, setting and disappearing in the evening sky after sunset. And they do this dance with the sun, you know, cyclically. It's a regular thing. So it's a very natural part of the sky. But mythologically speaking, there were stories that were tied to these planetary motions. And, you can say that maybe part of why there was a story attached to the movement of the planets is a way of remembering, okay, this is how many, say, days that we aren't able to see Venus in the evening sky, or how many, in the case of 40 days or 40 nights. So sometimes there's ways of memorizing these types of cycles in the sky. I think myth is one way that we do that. And so for Venus, most commonly there is the myth of Inanna, which I should have linked this before, but I will after I'm done. So if you're catching this later, it should be below. But wherever Venus is in their relationship with the sun, so where are they in that retrograde direct cycle? That is going to speak to the part of that story that might be really relevant in terms of timing with the life of the person. So, for instance, when Venus is moving across the sky as expected, and then they station and then they move retrograde, that's a planet that's doing something very unexpected, very different than they were doing before. And so, likewise, if someone was born with a direct Venus that was, maybe 2 weeks after birth, going to station retrograde, we could say that at some point in that person's life, maybe in their adolescence or adulthood, that at some point something was going to shift with their Venus things, and they were going to start to do that differently in proportion, in a reflection to that same part of the cycle that you kind of jumped into when you were born. So it's almost like Venus is going through this story, like say the myth of Inanna, the descent, which I probably will give the short and quick version in a minute, for those who are new to that myth. But it's like that story is on repeat in the sky in various ways, various formations. It happens cyclically. And when we're born, we kind of jump in at a certain part of that story, and then we go along for that ride, if that makes sense, if that is a different way of looking at it. So then getting to the story of Venus and their cycle, their relationship with the sun, a synodic cycle is another way of talking about that. So Venus moving direct, getting really far away from the sun. They have their maximum elongation. Usually Venus is moving pretty quickly at this point. And that's someone who maybe if they're born when Venus is direct, they're going to move along in a certain way with Venus related topics. And I haven't said it. I'm kind of making an assumption that people know what Venus is. I shouldn't do that. So Venus, we can, in short, say is love, romance, relationship, that kind of bucket of stuff. Venus is also beauty, art, what looks good, what feels good, what tastes good, preferences. Venus is values, valuables. Venus is also our desires and ethics and morals and justice. That's another Venus, file under Venus thing. Big topic of fairness, ethics, justice. All of Venus. So let's say you're going about all of those topics a certain way, and then maybe say like you get a divorce or you change careers or something. Something about those topics of preferences, love, relationship, values, ethics shifts at some point in life later down the road for that person. Let's say that you were born with Venus retrograde in your chart. Venus retrograde is the retrograde planet is doing things differently, usually doing things differently than the mainstream. They are more like subculture, counterculture. They prefer different things. They value different things, or they value things sometimes in a different way. They express that value in a different way than the mainstream society. I am dating one, and yeah, like they appreciate things that Society does not appreciate. And their preferences are not the mainstream preferences that you might expect. So there's nothing wrong or bad about it, but that person might have that, very prominent in their nature. Um, let's say you're born with Venus, and now this is the case of the person who wrote this question. So let's look at the last time that Venus was stationing direct. So now in terms of like the story of Inanna, uh, this goddess of beauty, goddess of art, goddess of love and war. If there was injustice or a lack of fairness, Venus would go to war. They go through this whole underworld journey, and that is the retrograde. That is during the retrograde, going through the heart of the sun, disappearing from the sky, and then being reborn and reappearing in the sky once again. Uh, really having gone through a transformation, having experienced something very important or something that really changes Venus in some important way. There's an impact of going through that retrograde journey. At some point, Venus is about to station direct. They're pretty much mostly done with that retrograde journey. And so if you come in at that part of the story, maybe there's, if Venus is say, what did you say? The day before being born, the day before Venus stations direct. So if Venus is still retrograde in your chart, especially, but I mean, maybe even if they're really slow and they've been retrograde, maybe you have that kind of subculture, counterculture preference, or maybe your values are not the mainstream values of those around you. It's usually in relative to those around you or your experiences around you. Maybe that's part of your experience, that retrograde experience. But then earlier in life, we can kind of extrapolate that, okay, Venus is going to station direct and start going in and retracing a lot of steps that they have already been at with new knowledge, with new experience, with fresh eyes, and able to give kind of a different perspective having gone through that whole journey. But that's going to happen earlier in life if there is that switch to doing things differently. Now this is a harder one to tack on to Venus stationing direct or Venus retrograde stationing direct, or even like Venus about to station retrograde. So any of those switches like really close to the birth, like especially within a week, if we're going by Hellenistic standards, they really cared, about within a week, because that's about when they could clock it. Then that planet is going to have a bigger influence in your life. But again, like this example I'm about to say is not one that's easy to, it's not a strong interpretation, but divorce of parents, a lot of people's parents got divorced when they were young, not to dismiss, but to just say it's very common. So to say like, oh, if you have Venus retrograde that's about to station direct, or Venus direct that's about to station retrograde, then your parents must have got divorced when you were young. But sometimes if there's like some kind of change in relational stuff or change in relationships early in the life, you experience that through your parents' relationship as a child. So sometimes that's what it is, and it has a big impact, and you see relationship differently than moving forward. But again, that example of a stationing Venus upon your birth, basically, that one's harder and not as strong or robust because it's kind of a common thing to have that happen, unfortunately. At least in my generation, I should say. So if you're like, Gen X, elder millennial, much more common that your parents got divorced because divorce started to become more acceptable and legal, etc. Um, okay, let's see. Is there anything else in that question I missed? But yeah, I would say especially anyone who has a stationing planet within a week of birth, the Hellenistic standard is to say, okay, that planet has some bigger impact in the life of the person. And so let's pretend, and this is maybe my last point. So, like, what else? I've been talking about like a big shift in how Venus operates as represented by a planet going in one direction and then going in a different direction and doing things differently in that way. Um, and then, what changes, what shifts, or what do you see? What do you get kind of a different perspective with? Oh, Venus things, art, love, beauty, ethical things. Also, Venus rules two sets of house topics in your chart. And so let's say, and we can do this for Mercury too. So if you've got like a Mercury stationing within a week of your birth, Mercury is going to be more loud, more impactful, more important in the chart. And then maybe also the house topics that Mercury is in charge of. So like the Virgo, Gemini house topics for people with Venus stationing in their chart. And if we get that, as Chris Brennan says, an exclamation point next to that planet that's stationing within a week of birth, then we want to look at, all right, so for this theoretical Virgo rising, that would be maybe big shifts at some point in life with how they do money, how they make income, how they think of resourcing, how they think of values, like what do they value? Maybe that shifts in and of itself over the course of the lifetime in a really, more stark, impactful way. And beliefs. Maybe at some point there's a big shift in beliefs, systems of viewing the world, in how they do or do not do long distance travel, um, education or university experiences, continuing education experiences, any kind of shifts or doing things differently with those, or those topics being more impactful in the life if Venus stationed around the time of your birth. So, a lot to consider. Uh, if you'd like to consider more, um, I forgot to mention it. I have a beginner astrology guide. It's free. I made it for you, whoever you are, and you can have it, and it's linked below, I'm pretty sure. And if not, it's at my website, www.aligninglightastrology.com, and you can catch all of my stuff there, my bookings, et cetera, my writings, my fanatical writings that are sparse and chaotic and sometimes like a little too intense. But that's okay. I'm trying to come out of my little 12th house shell. That's what we do. We got to put ourselves out there. Uh, Let me see if there's any questions. Hello, Cassandra. Thank you for asking. Am I doing Western or Vedic astrology? I am doing Western tropical astrology. Big quotes on the Western part of it, quotation fingers. um, it is Hellenistic astrology, which was from approximately 1 BCE, the first century BCE, until practiced around those techniques until about the 7th century, 7th or 8th century CE, around the Mediterranean region. So a lot of the techniques that I am using, even though, okay, yes, I do have Chiron on the chart, I do have the outer planets, I do synthesize some modern stuff in. A lot of my techniques come from people that lived around that time frame, mostly from like the cultures around Mesopotamia. It's like the Mesopotamian cultures, Akkadians, uh, and then the Egyptians, a lot of the Egyptian cultures and their practices that were more around like timekeeping and when to time religious rituals. That's where some of this stuff came from as well. And my teachers, for anyone who is interested, are Chris Brennan. That's my main one. Lisa Scheim. I do electional astrology. I've learned that from them. Natal astrology from Chris. Uh, I'm an astrology podcast fan, big time. Of course, I think a lot of my listeners learn from a lot of the same people. We're all kind of drinking from the same hose, as it were. And also, like Jason Hawley, I got a lot of stuff about myth and like psychological astrology. I learned from listening to lectures from Jason Hawley. Demetra George is probably the other biggest influence. And then rounding it out with, I mean, the astrology podcast team of Austin and Kelly, of course. Um, those are kind of some of my main influences. So if you want to learn more, that's who I learned my stuff from. So yeah, it's not really Western, but that's what we call it for some reason. I don't know. And it's kind of funny because Vedic astrology, which is awesome, and for that, I go to Nate Craddock of Soul Friend Astrology. He does Vedic, and he learned from Freedom Cole, who Austin Coppock learned Vedic from. And I don't know who Freedom Cole learned from, but that's that lineage. And I pull this up here, the Zodiacal releasing. I'm trying to like make friends. Here's my olive branch to the Vedic astrologers in the house. It's so funny because like Dasha systems and zodiacal releasing feel like long lost cousins or sisters or whatever. So there's a lot that Hellenistic and Vedic have in common that like Hellenistic and contemporary astrology don't somehow, which is so interesting to me. So, long story short, Hellenistic, modern synthesis, not Vedic. I wish. Um, I feel like I'm still getting my sea legs a bit. I've been studying since 2017, and like late 2016 into 2017 is when I started in earnest. And I think I feel like maybe a few more years, I would like to start to learn Vedic, but it feels like that's what the smart kids are doing. I haven't caught up yet. Um, but yeah, thank you for the question. I should start mentioning that more because you're not the first person to ask me either. And yeah, I should start saying that more explicitly. Okay, what else? Yeah, like that's goals, Cassandra. I wish I could go back and forth between the two. I am a baby, and it's actually kind of why I love going to Vedic astrologer. I think it's because I don't know it and I can't understand like anything that's in front of me on the computer screen. It's like even, a square chart. It's just very different. And I love it because I can't, my brain is not allowed to think and I get to receive. It's really nice. Once I actually start learning it, I will go back into neurotic mode. But I'm enjoying kind of, I guess, being a baby over here. Yeah, Chris, I mean, also, I've heard Adam Summer mention that. There's also like the Yavana Jataka, which is it's one of the texts we have that shows that there was some overlap, there was some sharing between the Greek speaking astrology people and Indian astrology. So, yeah, rad. Oh my gosh, we're having a discussion. Let me, I think that was it for the question about stations. Hopefully that covers it. Thank you for that question. It was great. I think I'm going to go on to talking about Neptune and Aries, and I will be back in the chat. Uno momento. So we have Neptune now definitely in Aries until 2038, 2039 for 14 years. And Neptune, I just want to throw this out there. So I know there's a lot of other astrologers who listen to this, who are actively like able to do their own practice, can fish on their own. So I'm not gonna like get into this, but just to put, if it's not already in your bucket of keywords for Neptune, I wanted to share expectations, expectations, and not to judge at all because it's natural. Like our brains are literally expectation making machines out of survival. We're trying to know what to expect so we can avoid threats and etc., navigate things. So expectations are going to happen. Also hopes and things of that nature. Kind of there's like a Venn diagram between expectations, hopes, fears, or maybe it's an umbrella of expectation, and underneath is hopes and fears. So all of that is very Neptune. And I have already seen several examples of fears and expectations kind of getting a little out of control, a little out of hand. Uh, and so, the best we can of just noticing like when we're expecting certain things. Like I just recently had someone very kindly offer me or invite me onto a project, and I misunderstood something that they were saying because Neptune's in my third. Not to escape accountability, but to just say there's a reflection. Neptune is Neptuning in my third. I'm not able to read and have reading comprehension, apparently. But I like voiced an expectation to this person that I was going to have, that I knew I was going to have. I was like, I'm going to expect this, and I don't know if that's in alignment with what we might want, or what you might want. And so I was like naming an expectation that I knew it was coming up in myself. And I think that's the best thing that we can do is just communicate it when it comes up, if it's necessary to communicate. So, Aries, it makes them quick, it makes them fast. So, we might be really quick to have an expectation of some kind, whether that's a quick anticipatory fear, like anticipation, or a quick, like, oh my gosh, I hope this is the best thing ever. This is going to be amazing. It can be, that Aries enthusiasm, which is great and I think a beautiful quality. I am biased. But I think with Neptune here, with Neptune mixed with enthusiasm or that speed, it can get us into just disappointment. It's just a recipe for disappointment. And so I wanted to throw that word expectations into your bucket of stuff. Uh, Let me, I think I had one other Neptune thing. Too quick to be Saturn. So that was the other way I wanted to look at this. So Aries being too quick to do something, and now let's bring Saturn into the mix. So let's bring them in. I just fast forwarded to June when we're going to have both of them in here. But that quick nature, so if we applied it to Neptune, we can also apply it to Saturn. And Saturn is accountability, responsibility. That could be a really beautiful way. Quick to be responsible, quick to be accountable. That could come up, I hope. A girl can dream, how, having a expectation arising. But it can also be that Saturn critique, criticism, judgment, quick to judge. So in short, I have a little bit of concern here about especially when you put these things together, you get quickness of like judgment with a planet of confusion. That's not great. Um, it's interesting that like Saturn is accusations and Neptune is lack of clarity. Saturn is evidence. Neptune dissolves evidence or obscures evidence. And there's a lot of like baseless accusations that can fly around when Saturn and Neptune get together. And I'm not going to get into, I've been looking into some news stories. One of them is like the climate crisis. And the last time we had Saturn and Neptune, it was 1980. It was the end of the 80s. There was two things. Whoop, I went too far. Actually, not far enough. Oh yeah, what am I doing? Not that. Sorry, folks. Uno momento. Yeah, 89. There were a couple things brewing slash happening, and this really stretched for a few years. they were together. Similar to now, how we've got Saturn coming closer and closer to Neptune. If we're, say, like Richard Tarnas, he mentions an orb of 10 degrees. And then, usually the application is stronger. But then a little bit too, afterwards, you can see the outcome of that conjunction in some ways, much more than you can in the middle of it. But in any event, there were these few years in the late 80s into the 90s where the climate crisis was being talked about a lot more. There was trials about it, looking at investigations, looking into it with big fossil fuel companies and all that stuff. And there was a lot of accusations about like going in a different direction that were baseless. Like that, say green energy costs too much money and it's not going to be worth it. And we don't have enough evidence yet to make it worth it. That was like, there's not enough evidence to make people invest in a different solution. And it was very Saturn, Neptune in terms of like, there's a lot of evidence being presented by scientists, and there's a lot of obfuscation and confusion being sown on purpose by government and bigger agencies, uh, capitalistic companies and things like that. There was also, in terms of Saturn accusations, Neptune, uh, just like confusion and baselessness around it, just not sturdiness of evidence or distortion around evidence. The whole epidemic around that we had in the 80s in general around the recreational use of cocaine and cocaine addiction. And that was across all races, socioeconomic classes. And then we got a different drug that was crack cocaine. Basically the same thing, a little bit of difference pharmacologically speaking. But it was like distorted, like in certain populations that were using that version of a similar thing that a lot of other people were using, there was this distortion of accusation upon an entire group of people, which were Black people, that really harmed those communities. That's what was going on last time Saturn and Neptune were together. So that was really horrible. And now we have Saturn and Neptune coming together again. There's a lot of distortion around evidence happening. There's a lot of confusion around evidence happening. And there's a lot of accusations that are just based on nothing, based on fantasy, confusion, misunderstanding, delusion. And we're seeing that with, especially in the United States, immigrant populations currently. So it's pretty rough. And that's all been happening kind of across Pisces. Pisces is less active. Pisces is slower in pace. Again, kind of rounding it back to my original note about speed and quickness. When these two planets get together in Aries, my concern is all of those processes really going quickly or speeding up in some kind of way. That is not great. So this could be a lot of, we can always make for everything. You can make some neutral delineations or interpretations. You can make some positive ones and you can make some gnarly ones. I just gave us all a bunch of gnarly ones. This can also be, again, that quick responsibility, inspired responsibility, inspired hard work again and again and again. Being very active and loud about what you're being responsible about. All of that would be a positive way that some of this could come out. But I did want to mention that because, again, I didn't make my Aries and Neptune video. So this is kind of my Aries and Neptune video. I'm gonna see if I scared anyone in the chat because that was about as doomsday as I get. But it's not my favorite combination, Saturn and Neptune. Okay, let's go to a happy thing. Uh, and talk about. So I guess closing thoughts, stay safe out there, friends, over the next year especially. But one happy thing that's going to be happening in the sky is going to be in June. I haven't talked about this yet in my forecast because it's happening in June, but I thought it was kind of fun and I wanted to get onto it in case I forget. But Jupiter is currently in Gemini and they are going into Cancer. And they're going to be doing that on the 9th of June. And the first day that they are in there, there's a mutual reception with the moon. And I thought that was so neat. So they can't see each other. It's a really weak mutual reception. It's not the loudest, most robust one, but it is one. And they're in a place that has some kind of anticia, at least by sign. So they have a little tin can telephone with each other and they can put their good resourcing together somehow. So June 9th, very interested. There is a bit of a hiccup at the beginning of June in terms of the Cancer planets getting past the square with Saturn. It's kind of bearing down on the situation a bit. But they do at the end of June break away from that. That being said, on the 9th, looks like in a lot of ways a nice kind of day. So I thought that was a random, cool little thing, a mutual reception on the day that Jupiter ingresses into a new sign or enters into a new sign. And then we get the moon on that same day being in Jupiter's sign and Jupiter being in the moon sign. Hello, welcome. If you have questions, you can ask them in the comment section. And if you have transit questions too, if there's anything, that you might have asked at the forecast and you weren't there, you can ask that here as well. Oh, speaking of Venus retrograde, conditioner update. So one thing that we see in the story of Inanna. Oh, I didn't give you the story of Inanna. That's okay. I actually go through it in a different video. I'll link it below if you wanted that. I recently went over it during this recent Venus retrograde. But you'll see how it goes along with Venus losing a lot of her Venusian powers over the course of that story and not having the nice, yummy, feel good, sensual things that Venus is known for part of her journey. Those are taken away from her. It's very unpleasant. And one really minor, just frivolous inconvenience that happened during my last Venus retrograde was that my conditioner that I usually use for my hair, it disappeared. I cannot find it anywhere. And I could get it on Amazon, but I'm trying not to buy stuff from Amazon. Um, and no judgment if you are. I'm kind of like a boycott when you can to the best of your ability kind of person. But still haven't found it. My hair's fine though. I found a different conditioner and everything is great. So Venus retrograde really pushed me out of my comfort zone. I tried something different and it ended up being fine, totally fine. And also the conditioner has seaweed in it. And I found it when Venus was retrograding in Pisces. So yeah, that was a beautiful little touch. Um, and another Venus retrograde thing that happened is that an old gum that I previously used to chew in my before life. I have not told my life story. I've been thinking about it because in the void of people knowing about me, they fill whatever assumptions come in. But I kind of had a before life when I was a pharmacist and I had a different relationship and it was a tough time. And I used to chew a type of gum during that time. And then I blew up my life. Here I am many years later, and I still haven't chewed this gum because like PTSD triggers, certain smells, certain things get me. Uh, and I got really brave over this last Venus retrograde and I purchased the flavor of gum and it went fine. It was totally fine. And I felt like such a boss. I was like, La Jefa in the house, get out of my way. So it was good. I actually had there were some difficult things at Venus retrograde for me personally. I had some difficult relational things go down, but they were surmountable. And all in all, like all the really stereotypical things happened. Had a bunch of deuterings, had a bunch of people reach out that were from my past. It was fine. All of it was fine. So even like those stereotypical stories coming up, the way that they came up was actually kind of delightful or constructive in some way, uh, all to give us some happy Venus retrograde stuff. I did want to report back on the conditioner though, because I was whining about it pretty heavily a few months ago. Okay, let's see. I think, oh, I have a 12th house thing I want to talk about. Uh, oh, someone else has a Venus retrograde thing. They tried switching from glasses to contacts and they did not like it. Yeah. Yeah. I got these like, it was really trivial. It was like some mango slices or something like in a bag with chili powder on them. And I got them a while back and they were really good, but they changed something in the recipe. And I got them again and I was like, these are not as good as I remember. And it was a bummer. So yeah, it doesn't always work out. Um, Spilled your drink as soon as you arrived. Hello, welcome. You still made it though. Uh, can you talk about your transition from day job to full-time astrologer? Yes, I can. I did talk to Chris about it on the astrology podcast, but more has happened since then. So I guess I could give a little update. Um, yeah, I guess I don't really need the wheel for that. Um, I didn't like plan it. Like I didn't set out like I am going to become a professional astrologer and it's going to become my whole life. Like that was never the goal, but it was more like it just kind of organically happened. Because I've been doing astrology or I've been studying astrology since late 2016, 2017. And I had been doing pharmacy since 2008. Like as a technician, I got my license for pharmacy in 2013. I'd been licensed working for like 8 or 9 years by the time I quit. The whole time that like decade that I was in school, residency, and then out in the world working, I was also a preceptor as a pharmacy preceptor. And that's just a fancy word for clinical instructor or teacher that's out in the real world teaching you how to pharmacist in a pharmacy. So not class. I was never a classroom instructor or teacher. Um, oh, sorry, distraction arose. Uh, but anyway, that's how it started. And I got really burnt out. Pharmacy is very difficult, extremely difficult job. Hats off to all my pharmacist brethren out there who are still working. And I got tired and I could sense myself getting very tired. And it was to where it's like um, the quality of my work in pharmacy was not to the standard that I knew it could be. I was doing the minimum that was like basically expected of me. Like, and I'd still go above and beyond for my patients, but like, yeah, I wasn't going above and beyond for like the people around me. Like, I don't know. It just wasn't to my standards. And I was noticing that as that was happening. And as my own anxiety and depression was increasing, because I have those problems, and I've had those problems for a long time, but they were getting worse. And this was around like 2020, 2021. I was starting to do readings for friends just for fun. They heard I did or I was like studying astrology really seriously, or I was really into it. It was like my new obsession. And they were asking me for readings. And so I ended up doing some readings. And I was like, oh my God, I could actually like do this. This could be a thing that I could do because I had been for the last decade like talking to patients one-on-one, doing stuff, in healthcare with patients. It was like taking a lot of those skills of explaining weird stuff in a way people could understand, hopefully. And giving them practical tools and practical guidance of like, hey, there's shitty weather coming. Please don't send in that application. It's like very practical stuff I wanted to offer. And I never expected astrology to be able to do that. It did. Fast forward, I made a website. I was still doing pharmacy. I was definitely doing pharmacy like 50 hours a week. I was listening to my classes and my coursework like every minute that I could. I get home, I make a website over the course of a few months. Probably not possible without Sphere and Sundry's Mercury oils. Yay, plug for astrological magic. Um, it was probably like a 2 year period of time. I think it took me 2 years to go from I need to leave to leaving. And in that, and even before then, even like 5 years before I left pharmacy, something inside of me was like, I don't know if I'm going to do this forever. I don't know what's happening. The profession itself has been eroding and eroding, and like the profession I signed up for no longer exists. It barely existed by the time I got out there. I wanted to work at like a small community pharmacy and be like a local easy access person to ask health stuff to. That's really hard to be. So long story short, I ended up saving up a lot of money. I was not spending my money. I did not buy a house. I could have. I could have probably started to do that or like get a down payment saved up for, but I did not. And instead of a house, I have my freedom. And part of why I had to save up so much money was because my student loan debt payments were so high that like you get out and everything's income based for me. So I still had to go like a whole year basically by the time I quit because I didn't time it out. I guess I could have probably timed it out. No, I couldn't have because I had to go out into the world and not make like any money to then show the student loan lenders, hey, I don't make any money. Don't make me pay as much. But there was a whole year after I quit pharmacy that I was still having to pay pharmacy level student loan debt payments based on that income, which was rough. So a lot of that money that I saved up went to be able to pay that for a year and also to just rest for a few months and give myself a sabbatical because I was like riddled with moral injury. I was just a mess. I was a mess. I was like very mentally ill. And yeah, I took care of myself for a few months, got my shit together. 2021, finally, like, or end of 2021, I think I finally had my shit together a little bit. And then now it's been 4 years and I feel like I finally have like a business that works and runs and kind of like has a system and an order, but it's taken me 4 years of doing it full time. Yeah. And a little bit of time in there too. I almost had to move back in with my parents and I worked at Astrology Hub. Shout out. Thanks. Thanks to Astrology Hub, who hired me to do readings for people. So I was a reader at Astrology Hub. Like I just sat at my desk and people just called in. Like I would just like be there for like 4 hours and people just call in and it was like, hey, how's it going? And I'd type in their information and we'd have a great conversation. They're still doing that. Go for it. But yeah, I wanted to, eventually I got out of financial desperation. So again, thanks to them. And then I really wanted to focus on my own castle at that time. And I wanted to do research and I wanted to have more time for that. So yeah, I've just kind of been, yeah, that was a really long story. Sorry, I didn't realize it was going to be that long because I've never told it totally like that. Um, yeah, it's great. I hope it lasts a lot longer. I don't know, I might have to call Astrology Hub again soon. But yeah, I'm expanding. I'm gonna start doing tarot soon, I think. I think people are scared right now. I think people are trying to save money and I can sense that. And I want to provide offerings that are a little bit more accessible than like the four that I have that are not always accessible. Uh, I guess while I'm talking about that too, I do have a sliding scale not to sell my biz, but I do have a sliding scale. So like if you want to get astrology, but you're like, wow, that's a lot of resources that I do not have. I have a sliding scale. So email me. And it's on my website in the FAQ section, but also my email is aligninglight@gmail.com. Um, yeah, I don't know. I am not a good business person. I know there are, I guess, the last thing I'll say about it, about becoming like full-time astrologer. Like it's tough. I mean, there's different paths you can go. There's people who like are very much in the community, in the orgs, like end up working for Kepler in academia, go work for um, a bigger kind of company. There are these bigger companies coming up, which is wild, like Channy Nicholas, like they actually have like benefits. Um, there's all these other jobs too, like there's tech stuff with astrology. I don't know how much you can make there. Uh, survive, just within that at least. But yeah, there are actually ways too you can, I think, even thrive. Um, but yeah, it's not like I don't want to like just tell people, oh yeah, do it because like literally it's not stable. It's not super stable all the time. I know that's also kind of the nature with owning your own business, like whatever your own business is, it can be like very up and down. And, especially if certain political climate stuff is going on, like, yeah, we get people getting rocked. Like, yeah, there's ripple that ripples outward. Um, so I think a lot of business owners across industries have a lot of uncertainty. This is no different. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, I guess. Maybe that's my other point too. So it's not just like, oh, you can only see clients one-on-one and that's the only way to be in this kind of industry. Um, yeah, I love talking about that stuff. I kind of love talking shop. I have a Capricorn sun and Mercury. And like, of course, until after my Saturn return, I was like, I don't feel like a Capricorn. I'm not. And now I'm like, oh yeah, workflow. It's embarrassing. Uh, let's see. Oh my gosh, yeah. I was like, woo, that was a whole different world. That was a whole different me. I cannot believe I made it out of that situation. Um, definitely wild. That whole trip was wild. But thank you for listening. Very grateful for this opportunity and job and just like everyone who listens to this. Thanks for being here also. Like the fact that people come here in person, like at the same time as me, like I feel like this heals something in me. It's so nice. It's so nice. Okay, we got Scorpio rising in the house. Oh yeah. Okay, I also have a Pisces moon. So water babies, calling all water babies, if you have placements in Scorpio, Pisces, or Cancer, the Venus retrograde that we just had, um, you might have really felt into that Venus part of it. Whoa, why do I keep accidentally getting those coming up? Yeah, it started in Aries. It went back into Pisces. And so, especially if you have birth chart placements in these water signs, everything that's been going on in Pisces with Saturn, Venus, Neptune, Rahu, like all of that might have been like just very easily on your front doorstep. Really noticing that probably pretty strongly. Reading comments. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I've actually been thinking I'm like so private and also I'm kind of because of reasons of being exploited so much earlier in my life, I'm very private and I'm very resentful about how people want to know about you or people in general. Like people just want to know about you. Like they want like your bio, they want to like put in no more than 15 seconds of effort to get to know you. And like, I hate that for some reason. I'm like, you know what? I'm worth it. I'm worth the time for you to figure out that I'm not a fascist. Like, yeah, I do say it, but like, you got to hang out with me for like 20 minutes. Sorry. So I don't put a lot of my stuff out front, but I've been changing because Buddha, and he does say to do things for the sake of clarity. And I think it is a time where we could use a little bit more. So I've been thinking about putting myself out more out there just so like people kind of know. But I've been trying to untangle that from being like virtue signaling and performative, and not resentful, not resentful about it. I have a question. How do you think astrology will be perceived as all the outer planets are shifting to new signs, also with Neptune being in Aries with Saturn? Honestly, I am a little concerned. Um, I'm a little concerned. Short term, Saturn being with Neptune, like Neptune is, kind of being free and open, and it is spirituality, divination, a lot of those more ethereal, occult, mystical things. That's Neptune. And then Saturn's coming in, and Saturn is limitation, restriction, a cooling off, people being into more like practical, like real world kind of material world kind of focus. And so I do wonder if there's going to be over the next year. I'm like, is this what this is about? I've been sensing like a cooling off a bit, which is okay. I mean, honestly, like what we've had over the last 14 years has been Neptune and Pisces, and we have had a beautiful wave that we have ridden in terms of astrology. I say we like I was there for most of it. I wasn't there for most of it, you know. They all, walked so I could run. But that was Neptune and Pisces, full acceptance of the mystical, spiritual stuff. In Aries, people taking actions, people being quick to do a lot of things. I guess as long as we can keep up, maybe that's part of it too, is that, in Pisces, we had all the time in the world to be poetic with our language, to just like lean into the kind of artistry that goes into astrology and into all the like kind of delineations and interpretations. I wonder if Neptune and Aries, people aren't just going to be more interested in stuff that's more actionable, so I don't know, maybe it'll just shift. Maybe people's focus around what they're using it for will shift. I'm not sure, but I am a little nervous just Neptune not being in Pisces. It's like it's not in that kind of what feels more of a safe, congruent environment. Here it's not as cocooned in Aries. So let's just hope that no one's governments get weird. All the governments, please don't be weird about this. Just let us like do our thing. We're doing great. That's my that's my plea. Uh, but oh, in the outer planets too. I mean, that's another interesting thing is the outer planets are in this sextile trinity configuration that I did do like, and I saw a question I think about AI, so I'll get to that one next. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I have used AI a few times. I can probably count on this many fingers how many times I've used it. Like, don't hate me, bro. I'm trying to be like fickle or not fickle. I'm trying to be what's the word? Careful, I guess, about how I use it. That being said, I have, and I know it's also a little on the accuracy, but I did do like a very intense search one night, looking at every time something similar to this has happened and what historical events were going on around that time. And I made a few notes. I didn't want to make it into a thing. I was really looking for my own edification. I just wanted to see, like, if I could see something. I just wanted to see something. And what I noticed is, and in some of the cases I saw, like, it's every 200 years or so, we get like, say, a conjunction of two of these in a sextile. Or, maybe it's like Pluto, Uranus, Neptune in the order in sextiles and trines. So I didn't get like exactly. Those are my search parameters were a little fast and loose, but I wanted to see like what happens when we get outer planets in helpful constructive configurations, trines and sextiles. And it's a lot of like the big leaps forward, or the big swift changes for better or for worse. So, like when Martin Luther in like the 1500s split like the Protestants and the Catholics and that whole biz. That happened during one of these things, like this really intense lurch in a direction societally. And we can see it with technology, like the printing press, stuff like that, these big shifts forward in technology. Um, that more with like the Uranus stuff. When we get Neptune involved, it becomes more like socio-political, like socio-spiritual shifts or changes, social shifts or changes. Granted, the technological industrial shifts, of course, have social ramifications of change as well. But again, Neptune brings in, okay, spiritual stuff and, maybe even art movements, but big shifts. And it's not necessarily like I want, like I noticed a bias in myself to want to say, oh, a leap forward, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's a leap over here, sometimes it's a leap over there to the side, hopefully not back, but sometimes back, like America. We're definitely losing some ground that we had made. And it is happening very quickly. So and okay, collectively, what about personally? So then I want us to look at the house topics of Gemini, Aries, and Aquarius. So for this Scorpio rising, I would be looking at your fourth, your sixth, your eighth. What big shifts that are brewing in house topics related to the fourth house, sixth house, eighth house that like what big changes are causing a lot of your life to shift in some way? Like maybe here with your labor, your complex finances, your home stuff, your private life stuff, family stuff, health stuff, end of life preparation or management. Um, Big shifts or changes there. That would be what I would expect. And these are slow stories. It's not like this year we're gonna get a little preview during the solstice season of June, July, August. We're gonna get uh Saturn. Oh no, not Saturn. Forget that. I'm thinking of Uranus. They're going to go into July or into Gemini from like July through into November. So we're going to get a little taste, a little preview of Uranus going into Gemini, and then it's going to move back into Taurus. Neptune, they had been doing that little dip back and forth. Um, all to say, I don't think this stuff is going to bonk us over the head. These are like 7-year transits, 14-year transits, 20-year transits. We don't have to rush anywhere. I don't think there's like a train to catch or anything like that with these configurations. By sign, they're going to be around for a while. And so these big shifts forward, I think are going to be happening in our personal lives too. I don't think it's just collective stuff. So hopefully that gives you a little bit to work with there. Yeah, I definitely had a transformation story. Yeah, people love that shit. I have a vulnerability hangover after I share it though, but now Pluto's in my first, so I don't think I have a choice. Yeah, oh yeah, this question of can we talk about the marriage of astrology and AI? I am kind of concerned about this. Me too. Like I was just talking about, even using it for the purposes that I did. I guarantee I was reading erroneous information. Like it's just not. It's like a half baked. It's not done yet. It needs more time in the oven, first of all, not done. And um yeah, it kind of it's like a scourge on the environment allegedly, which is a problem. And people are using it for the dumbest things. And it's just not for what it in this. I made the analogy on Threads a while back that how we are acting with AI is like how people in the 50s or whenever it was were acting with Tupperware when we started getting plastic containers and we wanted to use them for everything. And we got saran wrap, the plastic wrap, and we wanted to put it around everything. And we didn't know that it had microplastics. And we didn't know that it was leaching into our foods if we microwaved it. And we didn't know any of this stuff. So it's like, I have a feeling with AI, likewise, we're going to find out a bunch of downstream effects at some point because and the fact that we went ham, we went so overboard. You like, oh gosh, sorry guys. I got an alarm to put my plants inside because I'm gonna get freeze. It's freezing tonight here. We get a frost warning. Uh, but yeah, we're gonna look back and I think regret just putting it in everything and using it for everything so quickly. I got really nervous too. I mean, this goes beyond astrology, but it's like now if you do search engine Google, the first response is an AI generated response. And they were doing that a beta for they even said it was like a beta, but they were like letting it do it for like health questions. I think I asked something about like ibuprofen. I was looking up something about ibuprofen and turmeric and like COX inhibitors or something. And it was giving me AI generated information for health questions. And I was like, this isn't good. That's not good at all. This erroneous thing that could be wrong at the drop of a hat. I have had some people, there's no judgment or shame for people who have like tried to use it for astrology. Anytime there's a new tool, of course, people are going to be curious and want to use it for like a bunch of stuff. So it makes sense that everyone's kind of playing with it and like seeing what they can do with it. Uh, but yeah, like it's just been wrong a lot. Like it's wrong about chart placement stuff. I trust it much more. I can't remember who I was having this discussion with. I think it was at my last forecast. One of the viewers mentioned this, but it feels more trustworthy to use for interpretations or delineations. Like if it's scraping the internet for information on like zodiac signs, like the kind of that foundational nuts and bolts information. I think it could be right about that. I think it's more likely to be correct about that stuff than calculating chart placements. And part of that too, I mean, there's a lot that goes into calculating all of this. Like the software that makes these calculations, I don't know, is ChatGPT able to do those calculations? It does not seem like they can do it accurately. And if it was a matter of just looking it up online, apparently it's not able to do that either. So I would definitely not use AI to run a chart. Go to Channing Nicholas, astro.com, astroseek.com. Those are all trustworthy places to get your chart drawn up. Um, okay, let's see if there's any final questions. Last call, everyone. You're all saying such nice things. Is it because Venus is in my third? I think so. Dux Noctis, an OG. You guys are so nice. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the, yeah, those are the two buttons. I have a bunch of stuff below. I have a bunch of old videos linked below that are still relevant. I am still working on my Saturn and Aries content. I am going to do rising sign videos for the Saturn and Aries time. Uh, I'm hoping to get that done in the next month. So watch out for that. I'm doing readings. I'm doing elections again. I'm doing electional astrology again, which is a practice of finding a great time, the fitting weather to do your activity of interest in the similar way that we plant at a certain time, we fish at a certain time. There are certain times to do just about anything astrologically where we can get the wind more at our back. So if you want an election, I also do that. That's a written report, although I'm willing to meet with people if we need to talk about the report. Um, I'm probably going to add tarot over the next several months, so that'll be in beta probably at the end of the solstice season. Um, There's only probably a few months left if you're in the Hellenistic astrology course of Chris Brennan's, the reading group. Probably going to be wrapping up over the next few months, but there's still a few months left of that. My discount code for right now for forecasting, if you want to look ahead at the upcoming year, 2 years, Earth, EARTH for 10% off. I think we're 12% off. I have a sliding scale if that's helpful. I think those are all my announcements. Thanks, everyone. I do this every second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Central. I know this is like in the middle of the night for some of my more universal time zone people, but hello if you're in tomorrow and the other time zones. And then I have a forecast at the end of the month, which is going to be the 29th of May at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be going over the upcoming astrology for June, and we'll be talking about Jupiter going into Cancer, a basket I've been putting way too many eggs in. I'm going to admit it right now. I'm putting a lot of eggs in there. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much. Take care. Have a good month. And if you have questions too, you want me to cover next month, put them in the comments below. Take care, everyone. Have a good